Can you farm 1,000,000 melons in 100 Minecraft days? This is exactly 1,000,000 melons, except everything you can see is 4 blocks deep. At first it didn't seem possible, I mean not at all, but after I saw RecRap try this challenge and fail by only 9,000 melons, I was convinced it was actually doable. This would be the largest mega build I've ever constructed, and probably the longest time I've ever spent in one world. It was day one and all I was thinking about was my priorities. A couple melon seeds, basic tools, and a place to call home for the next 100 days. I gathered up some logs, crafted stone necessities, and headed down to the caves. So I got some iron and coal. And then I had a pretty embarrassing fight with a single skeleton that I almost died to. Alright, it's day 0 and I almost died. And then just when things are about to get better, I do need some food though. That is an awful start. I ran out of food at Y-32. Time to go back to the surface. And on my way up, I found my first couple diamonds. I emerged at the surface only to see it was day 1, which, according to the graph I made, meant that I'm supposed to have about 10,000 melons at this point. I decided not to worry about it for now and made iron tools. So a cool thing about single player is when you pause the game, the time doesn't run. This was especially useful for my situation because whenever I had a thought that wasn't related to the game, I just pressed escape. This was my main time saver. Using this tactic, I went right back down to the caves. I found a lot of redstone, but at the cost of quite some time. I thought if I only had Fortune 3, I would have about quadruple the amount that I gathered. But there was a long way to go till then. I crafted all my redstone into blocks to save space, and continued the grind for early game redstone. What would I do with that redstone? Allow me to explain. This was the one farm unit that I was planning on mass producing, which meant redstone was necessary in almost every single component that was needed. I needed 6 redstone per unit. I wasn't sure of how many I was going to make, but one thing that I was sure of is that I needed many double chests full of this stuff. At this point, I'd gathered quite a few diamonds considering how many days I'd played. But regardless of my diamond supply, I had to go to the Nether. I was well aware that the Nether was the most dangerous part of this entire challenge. And what made it even more dangerous is that I didn't have a plan. I needed quartz for the automatic melon farm, and I also needed fire resistance potions for future Nether scavenging. So my plan really depended on if I could find a fortress in the first couple of minutes. It was day 3 when I walked through the portal. I was in Crimson. As I got my first quartz, I remembered that you can only get 1 quartz per quartz block. I would need fortune to get anything more than a couple measly quartz every few minutes. While looking for some quartz, I teased the pig with some fungus to see if it would run away. It didn't. After almost dying for the 2nd time, I continued my search for quartz with the danger of the Nether in mind. I didn't want to be too risky because if I die, I'll completely reset with 3 days of progress gone. But I also worried that I was going to be too safe and make this one Nether trip 10 years long. I thought about where I should be on this scale for the entirety of my time in the Nether. I saw a Nether wasteland in the distance, and as I got closer, I was stopped by a pretty angry ghast. Oh shoot. This is awful. Oh my god, I hate that. I hate that. I hate that. After finding some shelter, I started to form my strategy for the quartz collecting that I had to do. If I was going to be risky in the Nether and like speed bridge, then my only main worry was the lava below me. So after reaching the fortress, I could make a fire resistance potion with the nether wart and magma cream. After searching for a fortress for about 30 minutes, I became aware that I didn't even have to go to a fortress. It would just add more time to the clock. I could just come back to the Nether later with Fortune 3. And so I said bye to Big Pig and went back to the overworld. I came to the surface and began searching for a village. It took me a while, but eventually I found a valley, and right in the middle was a village and a river. Alright, first things first, I'm gonna need all those beds. I got all the beds and stripped the village of all of its resources and killed the golem. Using the golem's iron, I started construction on the iron farm. It was easy to follow the tutorial because whenever I needed to watch, like where to place a certain block, I would just pause the game. So every second I was running the game clock, I was building the farm. So it was really time efficient to build farms. For the iron farm, I chose the simplest design, because I really didn't have resources or time to build a massive iron farm on day 5. The design that I chose required some torches, some beds, and a hopper. It's pretty easy to make and it produces a lot more than you would think. Before I got it working, a villager walked right into it. I kinda needed villagers if I was gonna make another iron farm. Whoops. On day 6, I found the rarest sheep in the game. Wasn't really the kind of luck that I needed though, but I still needed a zombie for the iron farm to be finished. So I kinda made a budget floating roof to escort the zombies from the cave. But by the time I was close to finishing, it was already dusk. I got the zombie secure in the boat, and as I dug out of the hole, I can hear an iron golem burning. It was finally working. First of our iron. Perfect. Equally important to my iron, my vast supply of wood was severely lacking. So any spare moment that I had, I used to speedrun deforestation. I thought I had stripped the entire village of all of its resources, but when I looked around, I saw houses. I disassembled the framing of every house close to the iron farm. It was looking like a village full of broken house-sized rocks. On day 7, I got to work on my first section of the manual melon farm, if you would even call it that. The plan for the time in between the projects was to basically set up a melon farm on the riverside, so that whenever I was traveling to the other side of the village, I could just break those melons. I set up a basic camp on top of one of the houses, and did a search of the entire village. There was no library, and using those books was my plan to get Fortune 3. I had to find another way to get over a stack of leather. I reminded myself that I needed an enchantment table before I got those level 30 enchants. So I went on the mining trip of day 7 to get the required materials. But before I got to the lava pools, I found a name tag. Yes, that's a W. As I made a portal next to my camp, I thought about how long it would take before I had Fortune 3. There was no way I was getting it soon. But I needed quartz to start building the automatic farm soon. So I took some extra food and blocks and stepped into the portal for my second nether trip. After building my safe bridge, I decided that it was time to barter for the leather I needed. I spent over 30 gold ingots and only got 5 leather in return. The leather I needed would be easier to get if I just ran around killing cows in the overworld. So I came home on day 8 and made an enchanting table. A couple days later, I checked my melon count for the first time. It was 81. I was a 10th of the way done with only 81 melons. After realizing my count was so incredibly low, I decided to build a couple rows of a low budget melon farm. Time really does go by fast. Now it was time to build the cobblestone farm. I needed about 38,000 cobblestone for the automatic melon farm. And believe it or not, I didn't even have enough cobble to build the cobblestone farm. If that doesn't prove how much I needed it, I don't know what will. So right on time, I started making it. I had never made a farm like this in my entire life, so I was pretty surprised to see the production rate of the cobble. It produces 2,000 a minute, so it would take about 19 minutes to get all the cobblestone I would ever need. That's a pretty efficient farm. So it was completely finished. And the only thing left to do was to let it run for 20 minutes. The entire time it was running, it was so extremely laggy. But soon enough, I came back to turn it off and it broke. But thankfully it didn't matter because I had all the cobble I needed. I hadn't checked the iron farm in a while, so I checked and found 0. Up to this point, the iron farm was working flawlessly, but problems quickly spiraled out of hand. If I didn't get this fixed soon, I wouldn't have enough iron when the time came to build the main farm. After a long time, I fixed the iron farm and already had the cobble that I would need. So after some work on a small cow farm and some leather gathering, I decided I was going to make the beginning stages of the main farm due to how cheap it was. I ran around for a while until I found a very good spot next to the iron farm, and then started digging. I built until I ran out of resources, and before I went to go get more, I needed Fortune 3. Soon after getting level 30 enchants, I spent a couple days grinding for any kind of fortune and no luck. So I left for the mining trip without any fortune and hoped I would get it when I returned. A stack of redstone blocks later, I arrived home on the midnight of day 30. I actually got fortune this time, finally. Fortune 2, I'll take it. And the next morning, I quickly went to the Nether to repeat the process for quartz. Except for this time, it wasn't so easy. It was better having Fortune 3 this time, but my goal for the Nether was not the same as the overworld. After this trip, I planned to never return to the Nether again. So I had to return with a full inventory of quartz. I felt like wherever I went, I was always above a giant cliff or a lava ocean. The quartz was in more harder to reach areas this time. Most visible veins were on the Nether ceiling, but my inventory could only hold so many items. So when I couldn't carry anymore, I ran home. Right before I got to my portal, I had another pretty scary visit from Big Pig, but I still got safely to the overworld. I took a few steps out of my portal and then got right back to farming melons. I crafted up all my materials and built until I was broke. This was maybe the second hardest part of the entire 100 days. Because to remind you again, I was very new to this farm design and was still figuring out the fastest way to build a layer. After a few layers were done though, I was already in a good rhythm. But still after every layer I kept questioning, how can I do this faster? Or how can I move from layer to layer faster? While building on layer 4, I thought of ways that I could make sure that I never wasted one melon that was produced. Eventually I would produce more melons than a couple double chests could hold, so I tripled the size of the storage system to be safe. I also realized that I actually have to pick up the melon to trigger a single melons picked up stat, which means if I take melons out of a chest, it will not add to my total melon count. This wasn't part of the plan. On day 38, I found a skeleton horse. I've probably only seen skeleton horses like one other time in Minecraft ever. Apparently, they have like a 2% chance to spawn in each lightning strike, and thunderstorms are pretty rare. It was like day 39 at this point. I had completely lost my mind. But day 40 was a lot better because I finally got my efficiency 5 diamond axe and I could break melons like this. Yeah. I also made full diamonds so that it was almost impossible for me to die. At the end of the day, the automatic farm was working a lot better than I expected. I had 10,000 melons. And after a really long mining trip, I came home on day 48 and I was at 23,000. The next day, I started the building process again. I knew I needed to speed up everything or I wouldn't get to the million melons. So that's exactly what I did. For the whole real life week, I was building layer by layer. It got so tall that I died from falling off of it multiple times. Now I had been on the grind for 22 Minecraft days straight, and I had gotten to 110,000. I saw my storage system was already beginning to clog, so I transferred all the melons from the chests into a storage spot to the left of the farm for later. On that one day, I got 30,000 melons. I have 30 days left. 30,000 times 30 is 900k. That's exactly how much I needed to get to a million melons at the 100-day point. I was so confused how this was so perfect. I had already built the automatic farm bigger than I thought was ever going to be possible. So without any time to waste, I got to work on expanding the manual melon farms. I knew from the start that I wanted to create manual farms circling the automatic farm so that I could always be loading in the manual farm chunks no matter where I was. If I put them in a straight line, some of the chunks wouldn't be loading. When a chunk isn't loading, there's 0 melons being grown. That is not good. So I put the new farms wrapping around the automatic farm. And then when day 75 came around, I had 200k. At this point, I had stopped working on the automatic farm entirely, because I just didn't think it was necessary. My problems used to be not having enough materials to build the automatic farm, but new, more annoying problems came up quickly. My axe was exponentially requiring more and more XP to fix, which was a problem because I died a lot, and now I have like no XP. I could try to mine for XP, but that was such a waste of time for something like efficiency 5. I could try using villagers, but that would take a long time too. So I decided to just go mining until I got to level 36. It was a really big use of my time, and it made me feel like achieving a million melons was a lot less possible than before. But eventually I got enough XP and I repaired my axe. That was my last day in 2022. It was New Year's Day. We had reached 300,000 on day 86. Now I had nearly finished all of the complicated things, and all that was left to do was to mine melons as fast as possible, non-stop. 6 days later, on day 92, we had 400,000. No matter how much I wanted to fall asleep or punch a hole through my monitor, I kept farming melons. It was day 98, and you'll never guess what I was doing. Farming melons. In the rain. I stopped worrying about everything else in the world and hyper-focused on just farming melons until the sunrise of day 100. As the sun rose, I realized it was going to be actually close. I had no clue how many melons I would have after the final count. Admittedly, I wasn't even sure what melons were in which chests. It was time to count and I was so disorganized. So I just crafted all the melons I could possibly find and checked my total melon count for the last time.